And welcome to Big League Dream, the podcast, a show about fulfilling your dreams and taking it to the next level. I'm John Gonzalez. If you're a first-time listener, we thank you so much for joining the show. What is it all about? Well, it's a dad and his three sons reliving, talking about baseball, what's happening today in today's game, and also a little bit about the way things used to be back in the day. Joining us on the podcast, we have all three sons. We're fresh off a big baseball adventure. Let's say hi to son number 3, Zane Gonzalez. How you doing, Zane?
Doing well. Excited to have Caleb on the show. It's going to be a good show for everyone.
It will be. Zane is the pitching coach and recruiting coordinator at IUSB, Indiana University at South Bend, and he is fulfilling his dream of coaching at the collegiate level. Son number 2 is here. Ty, how you doing?
Doing great. So excited to get Caleb on the show. Former teammate of mine. Also got to play against him in JUCO ball. So super pumped to talk to him.
I'm sure we will talk about that. Ty is the Mets fan, I should have mentioned, and Zane is a Red Sox fan. And joining us now is son number 1, the Mariners fan, who is probably on his glory right now because Julio is hot and it's almost September.
He hit another four-hit game last night, and it was just kind of like, oh yeah, that's just what he does now. But yeah, excited that we're all able to do our first podcast since our big trip. So yeah, looking forward to it.
I'm sure we will talk about our trip at some point in this podcast, but our guest today is Caleb Baragar. He's a 2012 graduate of Jenison High School in Jenison, Michigan. He played travel baseball on the Grand Rapids Flames Baseball Club. He also ended up going to Jackson College, where Zach played, and then he went on to Indiana University. And he's had a lot of success through his collegiate level, and we'll talk about college level. We'll talk about college stuff with him, and also we'll talk about his experience in Major League Baseball, playing for the Giants. Then he also was with the Diamondbacks, and most recently with the Cleveland Guardians. And Zach, you said he's a free agent right now, right?
Yep. I know he battled some injury, so right now he's a free agent. He's at Driveline in Arizona and going through workouts, trying to get some exposure, get picked up by a team any day now.
All right, Zach, why don't you introduce our guest?
Really excited to talk to Caleb today. Old family friend of ours. We go way back to the travel ball days. So yeah, Caleb, I appreciate you getting up early with us this morning and chatting some baseball.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
I mean, there's so many ways we could go with this, right? I mean, well, let's just get right into it. What do we want to do?
Yeah, you're right. There's so many ways to attack this. As we said in the intro, and as you just said, Zach, Caleb's been a long time family friend. We've known the Barragars for a long time. He was part of our Grand Rapids Flames baseball club back in the day, and it's amazing the club's still going. And so we appreciate all the hard work he put in over the years to help establish our program. So, Caleb, really, again, thanks again for joining us on the show here. And this is the first time you've been on with us, right?
I think so. Yeah, I know me and you did an interview. When was that? That was back 2020 during COVID. But I think that's probably the last time I talked to you guys. Well, at least John. I know me and Zach have been talking back and forth for a couple of years, just via like Instagram, text message every now and then. But yeah, I haven't seen y'all in quite some time. It's nice.
Yeah, the last time I saw you too in person was when we were at a Scotty McCreery concert in downtown Grand Rapids.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, man. That was a long time ago too. When was that? That was December.
That was like 18 or 19.
Yeah,
something like that.
It's a long time, but so as you know, the podcast is about big league dreaming, fulfilling your dreams and taking it to the next level. As we said earlier, Major League Baseball is full of ups and downs. Just getting there is an adventure, right? You have a story. So let's start with your story. Obviously, we'll talk about the Flames, but let's start with your story. When did you first start having dreams of making it to Major League Baseball?
I think we all have that as a kid. Especially playing Little League like everybody wants to. And I kind of rationalized it pretty quickly. I was like, okay, like everybody says that you can't play baseball. So what am I going to do? So I was like, all right, I'll be a doctor. So I wanted to be a doctor. And baseball was kind of just a means to like go to college. I wanted to play baseball in college. And then after my sophomore fall in Jackson, I started getting some like pro interest. And I was like, oh, like, maybe that dream's not so far off. Like maybe that should kind of take the driver's seat of what I want to do. So I would say that's when I first started being serious about it. It was kind of like my sophomore year of college when I had a little more attention, and I was like, okay, like maybe this is feasible.
So making that leap from high school ball, travel ball to like first year at Jackson College, playing a competitive level, did you find that you had to step up your game to get to the next level every time?
Kind of, if that makes sense. Like I feel obviously the biggest jump was from Indiana to pro ball. But I think it was very nice for me to be able to go from high school to Jackson to IU because there was kind of that like middle ground. I didn't go right from high school to like a D1 school. I got to play against guys that were closer to my age at Jackson. Everybody was like freshman, sophomore age, which was really nice. Like there's not that 4-year gap, or sometimes even 5 if you're 18 going into high school and then getting out of high school and going into college and then you get that like 5th year senior. So there's not that like 5-year gap, and 5 years is quite a long time, especially in the terms of like baseball. So it kind of blended together a little bit. I will say, like I was always trying to improve, and thankfully it wasn't out of like, oh, I'm like way in over my head and I have to improve. I was just always trying to be the best that I could be. I remember my second year at Jackson, I was kind of like a really, I don't want to sound arrogant saying like big fish in a small pond, but like I was really dominant. Like I threw back-to-back no hitters. Like I didn't really struggle when I was at Jackson my second year outside of like walking guys. Like all my stuff was pretty self-inflicted. I felt like at that time, like I was throwing 90 in Michigan JUCO. You don't really see that, especially from the left side. And then I would say when I got to Indiana, I was more worried about kind of not being good enough. And then I got to pitch in the fall and I was like, okay, like I can actually pitch here. Like I had some good outings there too. And I remember after like my first one, because I came in with a whole new coaching staff that didn't recruit me. Tracy Smith had left for Arizona State, so I didn't know the coaches there. They didn't really know me. They didn't recruit me when they were at Louisville. I remember after my first like outing, our head coach was like, hey, like, you can really help us this year. I'm really impressed. And I was like, oh, cool. Like I'm going to be able to pitch here. It's not going to be one of those things where I'm not good enough to pitch at this level. I really have to like grind. I think I set like a very good groundwork with one of the guys who took me under his wing, Blake Higgins at Jackson, during my freshman winter. Like after the fall, he like kind of saw some potential in me and he like got me lifting weights for the first time. So he was able to kind of instill in me like a good work ethic. He ended up getting drafted by the Cardinals, I think, in the 15th round out of Jackson. He never made it. He had Tommy John twice, so that kind of shut down his career. But he was a really big influence to me to kind of give me that foundation of like, if I put the work in, I'm not going to have to worry about being good enough, or like that jump's not going to seem as big. And I really felt like I carried that through my career. And I think another really eye-opening thing was when I went to the COVID camp in 2020. I had a couple outings there and I was really good, and I didn't feel like I was trying to overdo anything. These were just like live scrimmages against our Giants guys, but
Well,
I
Caleb,
was pitching really well.
Caleb, before we get into the COVID camp and all that stuff, we definitely want to dive into the major league level. Let's kind of backtrack just a little bit, because I know Zach and Zane, probably their ears were just perking up going, yeah, Jackson, I want to talk with Jackson, want to talk making that leap to D1 college baseball, because they've seen the transition. Zach actually pitched at Jackson, as you know, and Zane, as the recruiting coordinator, has to deal with kids making that transition either from high school to JUCO, or from JUCO to even D2, or an AIA. Zach, why don't you jump in real quick, because I know you want to ask him some questions about Jackson.
Yeah, I can go a bunch of ways with Jackson. I know Blake Higgins. He's a great guy. Jackson has just had so much talent come out of there. Kalamazoo Valley too. Ty and Zane both y'all pitched there, so shout out KBCC. But yeah, I guess just touch on JUCO for a minute, because you would think that the stigma of JUCO ball would change, but I feel like it's still the same, where it's like guys coming out of high school, they don't want to go to JUCO, they want to go to a D1 school, even if they're not going to play. Well, at least I'm going D1. Us, like Ty, Zane, all three of us, we've had great success going to the JUCO level. Touch on how guys are, able to make it to the bigs like you did playing JUCO ball.
I think JUCO is great because you don't end up getting spoiled. I remember Chris Lemonis would always talk about that. He's like, I love my JUCO guys because they're not spoiled. I love my JUCO guys because they're not spoiled. And JUCO is just it's just more baseball focused instead of like, I guess clout would be a good word to put there. Like you're there to play baseball. You're not there to be like, oh, I'm a D1 athlete. Like, look at me. It's like, no, you're just there to go play. Like you just want to play the game still. And I think a lot of people are losing sight of how valuable just playing is, because if you go, let's say you go out of state tuition for a bigger school or even some of the like private schools, I'm sure there are some expensive D2s out there. I know there's some really expensive D3s out there. And you're paying 30 grand a year to go sit the bench for a couple of years when you could be paying way less, probably get a scholarship to go to JUCO and you get to develop. I just don't see why more kids don't go that route. And also, like I said earlier, you get to play against guys your own age too. So like you get to kind of compete more on that basis with people who are like they have like the same amount of time in the game as you do. You're not playing against guys who are 5 years older and have that extra experience, which is nice. And I think there's something to be said about JUCO little closer too, because like your practice schedules I think are a little worse, like a little grindier. You're getting into the gym at 5:30 in the morning and it's taking PFPs on a basketball court instead of like a nice turf field. And just kind of one of my buddies like commented on one of my videos the other day about like our 6 a.m. hitting in a white batting cage. I don't know if the batting cage was white when you were at Jackson, but the batting cage was white when I was there. So he's like, we got a live BP against guys with a white batting cage. Like, how are you supposed to see the ball? So it's just one of those things where it creates like a little more grindy individual, which I think is always a great thing, especially for baseball players. Like that is so valuable to me, and just kind of to keep your head down and keep going all the time. Like that's kind of instilled that in me. And I don't know. What do you miss the most about Jackson? Like, I guess that's a good question for you. Like, what are some of your best memories there?
Yeah, I would say the dorms, how we were right there. Like, that was one thing that really drew me to Jackson, that I was able to live on campus and walk to all practices and classes, and I was living right there. It felt like I was at a bigger school than just a community college. And yeah, just the camaraderie with the team, getting in the vans. And the cool thing about Jackson, you're in the middle of the state, so like you only have to drive max 2 hours to go to all the games,
right?
Whereas if you're going, you're playing at Muskegon or Macomb, you have to go all the way across the state, and
and it could be 3-4 hours of driving too. I guess I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. Did you guys get it was like if you won both games of doubleheader, you get to go to Golden Corral. If you like split, you'd get, I don't know, I think it was like Jimmy John's. And if you lost both, it was like Little Caesars on the way home, or no? Did that not matter?
Rick Smith was always getting us Little Caesars, and he
Didn't
would sit shotgun, and then he'd put out his hand and he'd go, "I'm ready," and then the shotgun person would put a slice in his hand.
Oh, that's so funny. oh, Rick.
Zane,
That's
what do you
funny.
got?
I mean, I think everything you've pretty much touched on about JUCO is pretty spot on. Like that's why I love recruiting junior college kids to our school, is because, like you said, they're not spoiled. They kind of got to go through a little bit more to kind of get where they're going. But I guess kind of my question would be, what's some advice you might have for kids that are in high school, and kind of like maybe give them a glimpse of like where you were at in high school, and kind of what they should be considering between, junior colleges and 4-year schools coming out of high school?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I was kind of like not undersized because I wasn't short. I was like about 6 foot when I graduated high school, but I was like 160 or like 165, 170 range. So I was just really skinny. I didn't really know what lifting weights was. So I had like a lot of my frame to develop, and I ended up growing like 3 inches in college as well. Like between my first year and a half, I think at Jackson, like by the time I left, I was 6'3", 205 pounds. So not only did I grow, but I also put on some good muscle. So I think if you're, I don't even know if this still happens, because I feel like baseball is turning so competitive that everybody's like lifting at 14 now. which is wild for me to think that I was so far behind. But if you're undersized or like underdeveloped, I think JUCO's the absolute best place to go, you know? Um, and even if you didn't play that much, like if you got into baseball late and like you just need extra reps, like I said earlier, like reps are so big, man. Like that's where you learn. You learn from the game. Like some of my best teachers in all my career have been like my worst games because you learn the most from those games. Like nobody learns anything. You go out there and strike out the side in 9 pitches. Like, yeah, it looks great, but you don't learn anything, you know? And I think just not putting like a bad stigma. Like I remember there was like kind of a bad stigma on JUCO when I was going to junior college. It was like, oh, why would you do that? I'm like, because I want to go play at a higher level. Like I didn't have any D1 offers, so like this was the way for me to go to a higher level to play. You know, and it really shot my career up, to be honest. Like I've never looked back at it that way, but I definitely wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't go to junior college ball. Like I could have gone to some small D3 and that probably would have been it for my baseball career after 4 years. So it's really like a huge stepping stone and you kind of make of it what you want and make of it what you do. You know, if you put the work in, like you can probably do what you want with it.
Hi, how about you?
Yeah, I was wanted to ask you, Caleb. Well, first of all, I'm pretty sure one of those no hitters you mentioned earlier was against me, Kalamazoo.
It was. I didn't want to bring it up, but it was.
Well, I wasn't in the lineup that day, so
That's fair. That's
I will
probably
say
why.
that.
So I appreciate that.
No, I was gonna ask you, like, because we played travel ball like through high school, and then when I played against you at Kalamazoo, I remember just thinking, like, man, this dude is a beast now. Like, you worked your butt off, man, in the weight room, and you really built up a lot of muscle, and you were throwing way harder than me when me and you played together. How was that progression like when you went to Jackson? Like, did you slowly see yourself like throwing a little harder like every couple weeks, or like were you just working your butt off and then like boom, I'm throwing 10 miles an hour faster? Like, did you kind of see that happening like as you were working, or was it kind of like, oh shoot, like I did not realize I was throwing this hard?
I didn't realize it until the fall of my um, sophomore year. I didn't really start working out hard until the winter of my freshman year. Like I said, Blake Higgins, literally, I remember him like Zach can attest to how hard the dorms were to get in there, but Blake didn't live at the dorms. And it was like snowing one morning. I think it was like a Saturday or something. And he somehow got into the building, which you needed the key card to, which he didn't have. He got past the guard, which normally you have to like show an ID. And he just got past that guy. One of my roommates was up for something who let him in, and I left my key card to my dorm, like specific dorm, like on my door. So he was able to like get in from our like little dorm common area. And he like pulled me out of bed and he's like, we're going to the gym. And I was like, how did you get in here? But that was kind of like the light bulb moment for me. I was like, all right, I better go. Like, I better go. And that was really like, okay, like if I'm serious about baseball, like it's going to take a little more discipline than what I have.
Yeah, I love that story, Caleb, because it took a friend or someone to like make that light bulb go off, right? And I think for players, it hits you at a different time where you make that realization, like, oh my gosh, if I have a chance to get to the next level, I have got to. That's why I asked when this whole conversation started, like the work that you put in. I think people just go through the motions too often, right? And there's so many players that could make it to the major league level who have the talent, right? I'm sure you've seen it at the college level and in the minors, right? They have the talent, they have the physical tools. It has to be up here.
You have to want it for sure. For sure. Going back to the Ty's point though. So I remember throwing one time in the summer, and I was like throwing fastballs by everybody. And I was like, this is weird. It was like my first outing of summer ball. It was kind of like a late summer league. And I was like, like this was a little easier than normal. And then I had my first like outing back in the fall at Jackson, and that's when I hit 90 for the first time. And Gary didn't even tell me. Gary told me it was like 89. And then the next day he's like, oh, look at what I wrote down. And then he like showed me the 90 miles an hour. And I was like, why would you lie to me about that yesterday? And why wouldn't you just tell me it was 90, Gary? But yeah, I saw the biggest jump from that summer, and I think that summer I put a lot of work in the weight room. I was really consistent in my routine. I started like taking some protein for the first time. It was just protein powder, but for me, it was like, I mean, my diet now is very rigid, but back then it was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna eat pizza if I want to, and so just adding in like a little bit extra protein for me was a pretty big help for gaining muscle and like strength and power. So yeah, I probably went from like 83, 84 my freshman year to 88, 90 my my sophomore year, which is a pretty big jump, you know. And I think growing helped too and whatever, but definitely like lifting weights for the first time and really being diligent on that was a huge impact.
All right, Zach, why don't you bring us up to speed on what's going on with Caleb's life? I'm sure he has a lot going on right now, even though it might not seem like it.
Yeah, I mean, so you're out in Arizona right now, right? Probably
Correct.
working out pretty crazy and just trying to, working with your agent, exposure, trying to get picked up by a team right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100%.
So I do want to ask you about, so you played in the majors with the Giants. You did a full season AAA in Reno with the Diamondbacks, and then this year, 2023, you're with the Guardians. I do want to ask about kind of like the differences in baseball philosophy. Here's like my baseball nerd coming out, between different organizations. So like I know the Giants are really well known for like their biomechanics, right? They're like number one all of baseball, sports medicine, that kind of stuff. And the Guardians, they're really known for developing pitching. They've had success with all these pitchers come through. What were like some big differences between the different organizations that you saw that helped you, that you thought was like little things that was really interesting, like, oh, that would never happen in Arizona, or things like that really stood out to you?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with San Francisco. They were the first team to, or not, I guess not the first team, but when they got all the new guys in 2019, when Farhan took over, they really did like a deep dive with analytics, and they started like tailor pitchers towards their analytics, and which was really interesting to me because I, as a starter, was always taught like, hey, throw the ball down in the zone like to get ground balls, throw the ball down in the zone to get ground balls, and I threw one time in spring training, and Matt Daniels, our pitching analysis, came up to me. He actually came from Driveline. I think he was the first ever salary Driveline worker, which is kind of like a cool feather in his cap. He was like, "Hey, like you have a high carry fastball. Like stop throwing the ball at the bottom of the zone. Like throw it at the top. You're going to get a lot more strikeouts. Like you have one of the best carries in the organization. Like throw the ball at the top." I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yes." He's like, "You will strike out way more guys, and you will stop giving up home runs." And I was like, "Okay, like I'll try that." And obviously, 2019 was the best year I had in the minor leagues by far. Like all star in Double A, pitched pretty well at the end of the year in Triple A, like pretty good. So that was kind of like the biggest thing. And then they were really simple with me, like especially when I got to the big leagues. It was kind of a running joke that everybody had these like pitching cards with your like attack plan, and mine was blank. Like I had nothing on it. And my attack plan was like, hey, throw your fastball as hard as you can to the top of the zone until like somebody hits it off the wall, or like if you really want to throw a breaking ball, like just try to throw it for a strike. But other than that, just throw your fastball as hard as you can at the top. So that was kind of it was really simple for me there, which was nice, and like I had some good success with that, um, like that philosophy. And then with Cleveland, they were really good with the Hawkeye data, um, which is like a new Hawkeye's kind of like a new thing, but it spits out like biomech charts. I don't know. I obviously haven't been to San Francisco for 2 years, and Hawkeye was pretty new in 21. I don't even think they had an Oracle at the time. So I don't know what they do now, if they do anything with it. I'm sure they do something. But Cleveland was able to like generate some reports for me and kind of show me like, hey, like when you're pitching well, this is what you're doing, and when you're like struggling, this is what's happening. So like being able to kind of tailor mechanically to that was pretty helpful. And even like when I started having some arm issues, they were like, hey, your arm swing's longer. They were able to like pull that from the data and try. And so I was like, okay, like I got to try to shorten it up. Like I think the damage was kind of already done there. So I was like, all right, like I had a flexor strain and just kind of trying to pitch through it. So it didn't really matter at that point, like what I was doing with my arm action, like it wasn't comfortable. Um, as far as the development side, they had a lot of guys use like the core velo belt, like a lot of guys. That's kind of one of their big things was like the core velo belt, and they had quite a few like different drills. And I know during the off season they do some like velocity training with certain guys, so they're pretty big into like the pitch development side, as you said. And then like the tech, like they're pretty heavy on the tech too, like using TrackMan, like for all your bullpens and kind of getting you to like get the shapes there. Um, and I think Arizona's getting a little further along now. I heard this past year they had a like pitching design lab built in Arizona, which is pretty cool. Like last year when I was there, we didn't really have a whole lot of that side of the stuff. I think they were like coming around to it a little bit. Like I talked to some of the guys on the analytics side who were pretty smart. I think it was just taking them a little bit longer to catch up because I don't think they were like I don't know, like a league leader in tech or anything like that. But I think they're starting to catch up, especially from what I've heard. Like they're starting to get better on that pitch development side too. But they were a little more old school with their philosophies. Um, Last year I noticed than San Francisco was. So I'd say Cleveland and San Francisco are pretty similar. Arizona was like just a little behind just in kind of the way they ran things from like a pitch development side, but it sounds like they're making some pretty good changes over there as well.
Tyler Zane, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of with where you're at right now, like at Driveline, what have you been doing? What are kind of some things that was there anything that they noticed like right away that you hadn't heard before? Kind of what are some things that it's going on at Driveline for you right now?
So there were two main things. It was really impressive to get in there and do that motion capture, and it was just such a deeper dive than anything else I've been able to do. Like I threw two motion capture bullpens with San Francisco, but they never showed me any of the data. They never showed me anything, so it was kind of just like we're just going to have this in case we need it. And then obviously I'm not there anymore when I probably needed it. But so the two main things with Driveline, one thing that was really nice for me is I found out that most of my mechanics are really freaking good. Like I score pretty high on a lot of this stuff, which was nice for me. It took some like anxiety out of the searching for my mechanics that I'd been dealing with for like the last 2 years. Like I've been trying to get my velo back up to where it was in 2020. So I've been trying like a lot of stuff with mechanics, and like that led to some arm issues, and it led to like lack of command. So there was like two small things that my guy Toby at Driveline found. One was like my front leg was kind of pulling my pelvis open into front foot strike instead of my like load turning my pelvis and turning me into front foot strike. So that was one, and that was kind of causing my arm to be late. So my arm like wasn't up into like external rotation to have front foot plant. It was kind of like a slightly below parallel. So I was like a little bit into IR, and he's like, so you're basically just late. Like my arm was late. And he was like, if we can get your arm to be on time, like your velo's going to go back up and you're going to throw more strikes again. And like you're going to be able to command the ball better because you're just not late. Like I'm not going to miss arm side so much. I'm not going to yank the ball down glove side. Like both of those are timing misses as opposed to just like feel misses. And it's been really interesting. They took away two of my plyo drills that I was doing that were kind of like causing the issue that I've been doing for 5 years. And they gave me two new ones. In my last like three bullpens there, it's been like no arm side misses. My velo's been up. Like my last bullpen I had, my average velo was harder than it was during the season. And like that's a bullpen setting indoors without a hitter on a turf mound with just turfs instead of cleats, which normally I'm like 2 to 4 miles an hour lower than I would be in game in a bullpen. So it was like just completely eye opening to me to realize like this one little tweak had been holding me back so long. But it was really cool for me also to see like I do so many things right that I don't have to worry about all of these external factors that I've been kind of like worrying about, like where is my front side, or like how deep do I have to get into my backside? Like, do I load my backside well enough? Like I do all that stuff pretty well. and like the higher percentile side of stuff that they've seen. And it was like just this one little tweak of not pulling myself open with my front foot and letting my arm get on time. That's really like improved both my command and my velo.
I mean, it's probably validating a little bit and kind of gives you that, like you said, that pressure off. Now is this something you probably could have went and done at Driveline, like while you were with San Francisco, Arizona, or Cleveland? Like, or are organizations a little strict about where you go and what you do?
I definitely couldn't have done it during the season. Like that would have been a huge no-go.
Right.
But during the off season, teams aren't super strict, like especially to a place that's like that accredited. Like Driveline's had so much success with so many guys where I'm sure if I would have been like, hey, I'm gonna go Driveline this offseason, they'd be like, great, sure. Like absolutely, like, let's go do it. So I think they've built a good enough rapport with teams that they're very trusted. Like I know a lot of analytics guys get picked out of there. You know, like
Right.
a lot of teams just hire straight from Driveline. They're like, oh, we like that guy. We like what he does. Like he's going to come work for us now. So that's pretty cool to see too.
Well, I don't even know where to start with this one. Big league dreaming is all about, like we've said, pursuing your dreams, making it to the next level. And it's a dad and his three sons kind of just talking baseball every level. And this is, I believe, Caleb, you are our first, major league pitcher on the show. So we appreciate that. We have a relationship with you. We know you on a personal level. We know your family here in Grand Rapids, Jenison area. So, and we followed your family's career, your brother as well. It's been a great journey. But when I follow like maybe your mom, like on social media or whatever, and just to see the celebration of what it was like during that 2020, season when you made your major league debut, right? In an incredible circumstance against the Dodgers, and you came in relief and you picked up, not only were you successful, you faced some of the most, awesome hitters of the game, and you get the win. Can you kind of take us back to that moment, because that had to be a highlight of your life?
Yeah, I mean it's really funny because everybody talks about how much they hated 2020, and I always like to throw in there that 2020 was like the greatest year of my life. Like, it was for everybody else. I'm sorry, like it was kind of tough, but for me, like I was thriving. I got to get to the big leagues and everything. So for me, like selfishly, like 2020 was kind of great.
Can you relive that whole scenario for us real quick? I mean, or take your time, man.
Yeah,
Because it had to be.
yeah.
Your heart must have been just like pumping, right?
So it's really funny. I felt like I didn't have enough adrenaline in that game. Like there were no fans, no nothing, and I always go back to. I feel like I've told this story quite a bit. It's kind of interesting. But my first time facing any big league hitters outside of the Giants organization was a couple days before when we played at Oakland. And I remember being pretty nervous for that. Like I didn't even pitch in a big league spring training game, let alone like any other type of big leaguer situation. And it was just like a scrimmage against Oakland, and I had to face Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, and then Chris Davis. Those were like the three guys that I was coming to face. And I walked Chapman on like 9 pitches. It was kind of like a long at bat. And then I got Olson like 0-2, and I tried to bounce a curveball. I didn't bounce it. He like weak swing up the middle. We were playing 4 outfielders, so we got a double because it kind of just like trickled into the middle. We were trying some like weird new age baseball stuff. So we had 4 outfielders, and he hits like a soft liner up the middle, and it rolls in between both the outfielders. So he was able to get a double. And then I got Chris Davis to fly out to right, I think, and it scored Chapman. And I remember getting done with that and being like, okay, I just faced these 3 guys. I didn't really get hurt. It was all self-inflicted. Like maybe I can pitch up here. Like maybe I don't have to be so worried about the guys that I'm facing. And so after that game, like I ended up getting out of it with just 1 run. And I remember getting back to the bus and sitting there and being like, okay, like I didn't pitch too bad. And those are some of the best hitters in baseball. Like maybe I don't have to be so worried about who I'm facing. So for the rest of the year, I'm just not going to care who I'm facing. Like it's a right-handed hitter or left-handed hitter. Like I don't care. Like they're just a hitter. They're just a person. Like I don't think these guys are as good as what I was making them in my head. Like don't get me wrong, they're really good players, but even the best guys still get out 7 out of 10 times. So going into that game in LA, I was like just really calm, and I came in and I was like, I don't care who I'm facing. Like, it's a left-handed hitter. It ended up being Max Muncy. I ended up striking him out on 3 pitches, but the umpire didn't give it to me. Go back and look at the tape. The ball was in the zone. It wasn't close. And then he hit like a fly ball to center field. And then I got out of it. I got like a double play on a soft liner from Mookie the next at bat. And then I think I struck out Justin Turner to start my next inning. I don't remember who that other hitter I faced was.
Was it Bellinger?
And then maybe it was Bellinger.
Yeah.
Maybe it was. I was thinking about that the other day. Okay, it was Bellinger. I didn't even remember that. I don't remember what he did. And then I got Corey Seager to pop out, or fly out, which I thought when he hit that ball, I thought it was a homer. And then Austin Slater made like an unbelievable catch. But I remember getting out there and being like, I don't have enough adrenaline today. It'd be nice to have like a little more adrenaline here, to be honest. I was just super calm, but I just tried to be I tried to just shut out all the external factors, and just tried to throw the ball where I wanted to. It was kind of surreal. And then I didn't realize that you get like a beer shower when you get your first win afterwards. So it was COVID too, so we weren't supposed to do this, but they put me in a laundry cart and brought me into the bathrooms, and they poured like beer and ketchup and mustard and soap and baby powder, just all the like worst possible things. They just like, everybody celebrates with you and like they pour that on you, and you just kind of have like a good little team camaraderie there. So that it was pretty awesome. And I think it was pretty special too. Like, that was Gabe's first win as a Giant, and it was like my first one as a Giant. So we got to kind of have that together. And it's funny, they always give you the scorecard for your first win. And I got like a copy because it was also Gabe's. So I just have like a copy of the scorecard where he has like the original. So it's pretty funny.
It's not like back in the day where you could just like crush a Red Bull in the bullpen right before you come in from the outfield.
Yeah, no.
You see guys on TV where they're just like,
well, it's like really that's really funny to me too, because like caffeine takes about 30 minutes to kick in, like, to your system. So when guys do that, it's like, it's not even helpful. Like, what are you doing? The only thing that would be helpful if it's like a placebo effect, So I always laugh when I see that. I'm like, you should have drank that 2 innings ago, buddy. Like, come on. What are we?
I don't know. It worked for Ty on the plane.
Did it when you guys were traveling?
Shoot, I don't even remember what I had. I think that one morning I had like a Monster, a large Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and then Dad tried to buy me something else. I'm like, dude, I've already had like 60 ounces of straight caffeine. I think I'm all right.
Yeah.
Zane, you said that. You're like, you want to go get a Red Bull, buddy? I'm like, no.
Zane was like, I told Dad to get you another Monster, and he holds up his Dunkin' cup, and it's like this big. I just drank this.
That's funny. That's awesome. That is awesome.
It was a good trip, though. We'll remember that trip,
Yeah, tell
for
me
the
more
rest of our
about that,
lives.
dude. I'm really interested. How did the logistics of that happen, and how did you guys come up with that idea to do that? Like, whose idea was like, we're gonna do this? We're gonna go to 3 baseball games in 24 hours.
In the winter, I saw a guy do it on YouTube, and I sent it to the guys. We have a group chat for the podcast, and I said, we should do this. And I didn't think any of them would actually take me up on it, because we all live in different states. We all have different schedules. And sure enough, Zach's like routing it all out, like all spring. He's like, we could do this, this, and this. Does this work for everyone? It's like, oh, this might actually happen. All right, I guess we're gonna do it. And the guy's video that I watched, he like would go to a place, stay for like a couple innings, and then leave, stay for a couple innings and leave. I said, if we're gonna do it, we need to watch every single game start to finish. It's the only, you got to watch the whole game. It's the only way it's gonna count.
Yeah, for sure.
So Zach was sending out stuff every day, like, here's 3 stadiums, here's a night game, day game, night game. We could do this and that. So sure enough, we all landed on starting in Baltimore. So we all flew out to Baltimore for the night game. Then in the morning, we flew to Milwaukee, but we had a layover in St. Louis. So we stayed in St. Louis, then flew to Milwaukee. Dad got the rental car. So from Milwaukee after the game, we got in the rental car and drove to Chicago for the night game.
It's not bad. That's quite a bit of travel, though. Man, that's quite a bit of travel.
Yeah, it was a lot.
How was Camden Yards? Is that a pretty cool stadium? I've heard some great things.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was all of our first times going there except for Zach, but yeah, it was a beautiful ballpark, and it was a really good atmosphere too. Like the fans were really cool. I feel like that was the most interaction we got from fans out of the 3 stadiums because we all wore these
Really?
shirts. Yeah, we all wore these shirts, and on the back it says like 3 parks in 24 hours. And Dad, how many people talked to us before the game? It had to be at least 20 or 30 people, like just chatting and hanging out with us.
Yeah, Ty and I flew out of Grand Rapids to meet those guys in Baltimore, and even at the airport in Grand Rapids, they're like, "Oh, hey!" And I figure, well, we're in Grand Rapids, we're from Grand Rapids, people might recognize us, whatever, right? It just continued every step of the way, the whole day. We took a tour of the Babe Ruth Museum. People were asking us,
Oh, cool.
people at everywhere, just everywhere you went, people were asking. More than 30 people stopped to talk to us about our trip.
Really? That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think Baltimore
That's
was
really
the
cool.
most though, because the next day we're like, no one's really talking to us. Like in Milwaukee, we're like, nobody's talking to us in Milwaukee. No one's talking to us in our layover in St. Louis. But then we ended up being on the Milwaukee Brewers broadcast that day. They like showed a clip of us sitting there at the game.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, then people were.
That's really cool.
I still think it's because we got to the Brewers game so late. We got there like 20 minutes before first pitch. So like people weren't just kind of like hanging out, like looking at our shirts.
True. Yeah,
and
everybody's
whatnot.
getting ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, we had an extra one extra inning game too. That was a little bit of a challenge in Milwaukee.
Did you guys cut it close with that one then?
Yeah, we cut it really
You could
close.
say that.
We cut it really close.
We went through. It was the traffic though from Milwaukee to Chicago. Bruce Springsteen was at Wrigley Field that same night.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So you had a ton. Well, Chicago traffic's always bad, man. Like even when we were playing there, coming back from our games, because it felt like all your day games are at Wrigley. Like you're always playing a day game, and it took us probably 15 minutes to get to the hotel going there. It took us an hour coming back. Like the traffic in Chicago is just a different animal.
Well, we made it
Just a
to
different animal.
first pitch was 7:10 at Guaranteed Rate Field for the White Sox. We got in our seats at 7:01.
9 minutes to spare, sure. That's awesome.
Enough
That's
time to go to the bathroom and get a beer. It was great.
Yeah, exactly. That's tight. That's really cool. Do you think you guys will ever do that again?
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Probably.
We're
Yeah.
talking about 5 and 48 hours. That's the next one.
Ooh, that's a lot.
That's next year. We're gonna use the 11 o'clock.
I say you
4th of
guys
July
could
game.
probably do it if you went to like either like a LA like night game, day game, or like New York night game, day game. I don't know how far away those ballparks are in New York. I guess even LA traffic's terrible, so that's probably a bad idea too.
In New York, you just take the subway.
Oh yeah, I guess you could do it that way. I didn't even think about the logistics of that. That's probably your best bet then, huh?
Oh
You could,
yeah.
and especially like up there, all the northeastern states are all so close. Probably just drive.
Well, Caleb,
That's not a
for
bad idea
sure,
either.
we want to talk to you about your family. What's it been like to have their support over the years? Through travel ball, through college, through the minors. You have a tight family. What's it like, when you were just going through all that? Not saying that it's over yet, because we still want you to get signed and get picked up by somebody, which we hope will happen soon for you. But what's it been like just sharing this adventure, this journey with your family?
It's been awesome, man. I definitely couldn't do it without them. Just the fact that I know that they're always supportive, especially with like such a crazy, unique dream, like just the fact that they were never like, oh, like you should be more realistic, or like maybe it's time to be done. Like it's always been like, even when I was struggling in the minors, like for a couple of years in the beginning, they were always like very, very supportive and very positive with my career, which has been nice. And like just being able to have them to talk to, like I don't get to talk to my parents as much as I want to, especially during the season. But always being able to like carve out at least one day a week to talk to them, and our phone conversations are always like an hour, just because there's so much to check up on and do. But just having that whole aspect of a support system, and like following it up with my aunts have been really supportive too. So it's like not just my parents, but it's like my aunts too. Like that whole aspect of them caring about my career and caring about like me as a person has really helped me kind of keep going through some of the low points. Um, I think that's really, really underrated, is having a good support system. And like my wife too has been so awesome. And just all like everybody always being like positive about it, and always being everybody's like, oh, we're always praying for you, like good or bad, like we're always praying for you. Like that, the whole spiritual aspect has been really impactful on me too. And like it keeps kind of the weight of baseball off my shoulders a little bit, like that there's like that extra stress that's taken away by having such a good support system, and knowing that they're always there for me for anything that I need is really helpful.
Something random that I wanted to ask. For like now that baseball, you said that kind of takes your mind off baseball. It's got to be different now being a professional athlete. Like, I wanted to know, do you still get like that magic feeling when you walk into the ballpark, or does like some days when you're coming out of the bullpen, is it like you kind of, or are you just so focused you're not really thinking about all that stuff? Or do you still get like that feeling like when you go to Wrigley for the first time, like, well, I'm in Wrigley, like I'm a Cubs fan, this is cool.
Yeah, so I definitely got that feeling when I went to Wrigley, because like I grew up a Cubs fan,
Yeah.
and probably like my best memory is getting to pitch there like in front of my parents. Like I got to pitch at Wrigley Field in front of my parents. Like I don't know if I'll top that, just from a nostalgia standpoint of like growing up a Cubs fan. And I know how big of a Cubs fan my dad was. Like it would have been cool if I had a Cubs jersey on, I'm sure. Like I remember looking up at the scoreboard one day and being like, dang, I'm kind of playing for the bad guys. Because as a kid, like I always thought every team the Cubs played was like the bad guys. Um, but I still get that, like walking in the stadiums, like you still like showing up to the ballpark, especially when it's a new ballpark that I haven't been to. Like even in the minor leagues, it's like this is pretty cool. Like I get to play a game. Um, but don't get me wrong, there are some days where it's more stressful than I want it to be, especially when things aren't going well. Like the second half of the season this year, it was pretty stressful for me. Like I'm like trying to pitch through an injury because I was pitching so well at the beginning of the year, and like I'm hoping it just kind of heals itself and goes away. And then I'm not pitching well, and it's like there were some days where I'd show up and be like, "Man, I just want my arm not to hurt today." Like that's all I want. Like that's all you can think about, and like that's tough too. Um, but there are some days where it's a little tougher, especially in the minor leagues. Like it some starts to feel like a job, and I definitely need to do a better job of that. Like being a little more grateful and just kind of remembering like where I am sometimes instead of wishing that I was somewhere else. I think that's the hardest trap of this game, is when you get to the big leagues and then you have to go back down. I really struggled with that my first time doing it in 21. Like I was pitching pretty well in the big leagues. Like I wasn't pitching great, but the numbers were good, and like people weren't scoring. I could have thrown more strikes. I could have walked less guys, but at the end of the day, like you win ball games by scoring runs or not scoring runs. And so I felt like, oh well, I'm not giving up any runs in the big leagues. Why do I have to go down here? So I definitely didn't handle that very well in 21, and that definitely hurt my like mental side of the game for sure. Like if you look at my stats, it's pretty incredible that I had like a 9 ERA in AAA and a 1 in the big leagues. Like that shouldn't add up, but it's more the mental side. So I definitely think whenever I get back to pro ball, I'm going to be a little more cognizant of where my feet are, and kind of taking every day is a little more enjoyable. Even those minor league days, because you don't realize that you do miss it. Even like the cruddy travel or whatever. Like I'd give a lot to be on a 4 a.m. flight tomorrow. I tell you that much. And I used to complain about that a lot. So it's really eye opening and interesting to kind of sit back and reflect on stuff like that.
Well, we know your competitive heart and spirit through our old Grand Rapids Flames games and experiences. Ty, you have any memories with Caleb when you guys played together and with the Flames?
Too many. We so many games where I feel like we were in it where we shouldn't have been, And were you on that team where we played the Blue Jays like every other weekend?
Was that the Michigan Blue Jays?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, that team was really good. Or like the A green team. I remember they were always.
Yeah.
Eric Haas was on that team. I was thinking about that the other day.
Oh yeah, the A green team.
We ended up playing Eric Haas, the Tigers catcher. Or I guess he just got DFA'd by them. But I remember playing him. I remember fall ball always hitting behind Bacon, Rixey, and Rogers because John thought it was funny that it would go Bacon, Rixey, Rogers, Burger, and that used to drive me nuts. Oh my gosh, that used to drive me nuts.
Well, yeah, because you were hitting last too.
I know. I was like, I don't want to hit last. Oh, it's funny.
It just sounded so good. I mean, this made the team complete. Yeah, I could see why that would drive you crazy though.
Oh, it's funny. I wasn't the best hitter, but that's funny.
Dad, you couldn't mix it up and just put it at the top of the lineup just like once for him?
I should have.
It was really funny. I was like, I would have been it was really funny when I played for Doug. He hit me in like the 5 hole. And whenever I hit in the 5 hole, I'd hit really well. But if he hit me in like anything higher than that, I'd hit terrible. Just absolutely terrible. Like I think the best hitting of my career was done with Doug McCready's team when he would put me in the 5 hole. I'd go like 2 for 3 every game. And that was like really the only time I ever hit. I don't know. I couldn't tell you why, but it's pretty funny.
That's baseball for you.
You got to have your first major league at bat, and the Giants told you to just stand there, and all you did was just stand there.
I was not happy. If you couldn't tell by my like lack of enthusiasm by my batting stance.
It was like a long at bat too. You like almost walked.
I know. Yeah, it was really funny too because like I felt like I saw it really well, and it was Urias, and he was throwing like 94, and I was like, that doesn't look like 94. Like I feel like if I swung here, I would do some damage. And then I punched out because I couldn't swing. And I was walking back to the dugout and everybody's booing me. Like we're getting beat by the Dodgers like 13-1.
Yeah.
And all the fans are like giving it to me. I'm like, guys, I'm not allowed to swing here. Like they literally told me, don't swing. Like whatever you do, you can't swing. And I remember telling Gabe, I was like, Gabe, like I can hit, like I can swing. He's like, no, like you are not swinging. You're not getting hurt. Like absolutely not. He's like, you can put a bunt down if you want. And I was like, I feel like I have a better chance of getting hurt putting a bunt down than I do swinging. So I'm just going to stand here and take, and maybe he'll walk me. And then he didn't, but And then I got in that bat at Wrigley too. And they're like, you probably shouldn't swing here, but if you want to, like you can. And I faced an old college teammate, Scott F. Ross. And back in college, he threw like over the top and he threw pretty hard. He was like 95, 96. And he was throwing like submarine down under. And he was throwing like 92 from down there. And I hit right-handed. So he's like throwing the ball at me. I was like, I have no chance against this guy. Like I got no chance. The ball's coming at me. Like I haven't taken a swing in over a year. Over a year. Like I'm not going to swing against this guy, like break my fingers swinging at something. But it would have been nice if I could have swung off Urias. I to this day, I think I would have hit like a double or something. I saw it pretty well.
That's a great story. I love it. Well, we had a lot of fun when you played with the Flames, and we do appreciate that. And I'm sorry I didn't have you batting fifth. I wish I would have known.
It's okay. I didn't know until Doug started doing it anyway. So
I remember telling me it was crazy, but they said, hey, you should put him up higher in the batting order more often.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it was. I also swung at every first pitch, so I wasn't a work the count guy. I was like going to swing first pitch every time.
Hard not to. I was the same way.
Yeah.
It's the best one you're going to see.
Probably. I mean, if you look at it from pitching aspect, like you're going to try to get ahead. So, yeah, I don't know. And there definitely weren't scouting reports at that level. That's for sure.
Well, I know that Ty, when he played, he was like the Shohei Ohtani of KVCC baseball. He was, I think, Ty, did you play every position there except for shortstop?
Shortstop and center field were the only two I didn't play.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
They just kind of threw me. Yeah, impressive. And our team was very not impressive. So I think
was Pachaki the coach there while you were there?
Yeah, my second year, that was his first year as the head coach.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I played for him in the Northwoods. He was like an assistant.
Oh, for growlers.
for that Growlers team. Yeah.
Nice.
That's where Zane was there for a while, right, Zane?
Yep, I was there for 3 summers, 18, 19, and 20. Peacock was the manager. He still is.
He's still the manager for that team. Do they like take care of you guys better? Like they feed you a
Um,
little bit better?
yeah, they definitely have better sponsors than probably back when you were playing. So yeah, we'd get a lot better meals. I think like the best one I remember was like they would cater in like Applebee's, and it'd be like
Oh,
a
sure.
bunch of the like Fiesta lime chickens. Those
Oh, that's
those were
awesome.
always the best.
Yeah. Kalamazoo always did a pretty good job. There were some times on the road, man, though, where our food was bad. I hope they've improved it. And I remember we had to sign like something too, saying we wouldn't talk
Posted on social media.
illy. Yeah, because there was like somebody created like a Instagram account or something called like Northwoods League Grinders, and they were like showcasing how bad the food was, and the league was like pissed. And it's like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, man, like we probably should be feeding our guys something better than macaroni and cheese and a breadstick for post game.
Yeah.
Come
The
on.
worst was always when like it's like you got to drive all the way back and like they're like, all right, well, here's your post game meal. And it's just leftover ballpark food.
Oh yeah, it's kind of
Dude,
tough, and I get they got to make money too, but to take care of your players a little bit, like especially with all the information we have about nutrition, like what you eat is so important, especially for athletes. Like spend a little bit of money, feed the kids a little better. It'll be okay. It'll be all right.
I remember
Yeah.
I played for the Bombers for 1 week, and it was
gosh.
it was an all road trip. And I remember
Oh no.
one of the stops before the game, like driving like after 8 hours, they're like, all right, we're stopping for like a lunch. We have it all set up and catered for you guys. We pull into like this random dive bar in Iowa or something, and it's like all the leftover like buffet of whatever this place was. It was like all leftover buffet. I'm like, what the
Oh
heck?
no. Oh, that's funny. That is really funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that league, man. I remember going to that league and they're like, if you want to play pro ball, like this is the same. And pro ball is a little bit easier to travel. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It's a little bit less grindy.
Hey,
But,
Caleb,
it's a good experience.
before we wrap things up, just do give us an update on your injury. How you doing? What exactly is it, and how are you recovering?
I'm good now. I just had a flexor strain. It
Okay.
happened like the beginning of May, and I just kind of tried to pitch through it, and just kind of kept getting worse. And it just really took away my command. Like I just couldn't hold on to the baseball the same way. Um, and I started walking guys, and it ended up getting to the point where I was like, I'm just not even pitching the same way I used to. Like I'm just tentative on the mound. And I finally brought it up to our trainer, and he's like, all right, like we'll get you looked at. And I like passed all the TJ tests, which I was pretty sure it wasn't anything super serious. It was just like a muscle issue. And they took me through some tests for that. And they're like, yeah, flexor strain. Like we're gonna give you like couple days off, see how it goes. And it kind of took me a little bit longer to rehab than I wanted to. And then by the time I finally got healthy, Cleveland's like, hey, we don't have any roster space. Like we're gonna grant you your release, so hopefully you can find a new team before the season's over. So there's some new stuff with the roster sizes with the minor leagues this year. So the roster sizes has got trimmed down a little bit, and with all the draft guys coming in, it's been a little tight for teams. It seems like so. I've had a little bit of interest, but nothing definitive, especially with the way the rosters are. So I guess we're kind of just hoping for like a good break. But arm feels great now. It just took me a little bit of time. I probably should have said something on the front end, but I haven't really had any injury stuff coming through baseball, so I didn't really know how much to kind of like push through or whatever. And I guess if anything, it's been like a pretty good learning aspect for me to know like my limit of like what I can pitch through and like what I can't, and like obviously we all want to compete, but if I can't compete at my best or at least close enough to my best, like it's kind of detrimental to my career to be out there throwing at like 70% of what I'm capable of. So but I'm healthy now, like feels great. Like my bullpens have been good. Like I don't have any pain, which is great. So able to throw everything kind of where I want to now, and kind of cleaning up the mechanics I think is going to help me stay healthy. After talking to the guys at Driveline, they're like, it would make sense if you were putting more force on those muscles with your arm being late. Like it's just the way the kinetic chain works. So healthy now. So that's all we can ask for.
All right, guys. Anything else you want to add before we let Caleb go here?
If it's possible, go get picked up by the Mets because their bullpen's terrible. That would
Hey,
be
I'll go
great.
whoever wants to pay me. I'll gladly go throw baseballs for any team, but I'll note that for you.
Rosters expand in what, 10 days, September 1st at the major league level. So maybe something will come open for you. We're praying for you, Caleb. Wish you nothing
Appreciate it.
but the best, man.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, Caleb, for joining us here on Big League Dreaming, the podcast. Ty, if people want more information, I guess we should ask Caleb. I mean, do you want to promote your social channels at all, or are you not on social media much?
I wouldn't say I'm really on there much. Like, y'all can follow me. It's just Caleb_Baragar on both Instagram and Twitter. I say I don't post much. I've been posting more lately, just trying to get some exposure and get some of my like baseball stuff out there, see if we can spark some interest that way. But yeah, I haven't posted much. I don't really do social media too much, but y'all can follow me if you want. whatever you guys want to do.
Ty, where people do want to follow us, where can they do that?
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at BLD Pod. That's at BLDPOD. We're also on TikTok at Big League Dreaming. And of course, go check us out on YouTube, Big League Dreaming, the podcast. Catch you on the next one.